Hello everyone! So today we're going to be continuing our Empires A to Z series with the nation of Bolivia. Bolivia is a landlocked nation in central South America. It borders Peru to the west, Brazil to the north and east, Paraguay to the southeast, Argentina to the south, and Chile to the southwest. Bolivia has a population of over 12 million people, and it has the 96th largest economy in the world. Before we get started, this is a reminder that multinational alliances like NATO, the EU, and the UN do not exist in these videos. Despite being the most isolated country in South America, Bolivia has been fortunate as it is blessed with large quantities of natural resources like arable land, hydrocarbons, and valuable minerals like gold and lithium. While it has recently taken some steps to utilize these resources to grow the economy, we are going to increase the development of these natural resources to jumpstart economic growth. Lithium mining, agriculture, and hydrocarbon extraction will be used to fuel strong growth in local manufacturing efforts. With that underway, the Bolivian government is going to increase its rhetoric of its right for access to the sea and openly push for greater rights of the indigenous populations of its neighbors, while also increasing friendships with China and Russia. The armed forces are going to see a dramatic increase in funding to increase their size, training, and procurement. The army will be procuring new main battle tanks, armored personnel carriers, self-propelled artillery, and self-propelled anti-air systems. The Air Force will be procuring new multi-role fighters, light fighters, and UCAVs. With its economy and military on the rise, Bolivia begins to look towards gaining experience for its military. Its first act is to send an ultimatum to Paraguay to surrender the Chaco region or face invasion. Paraguay refuses, and Bolivia declares war on Paraguay. Bolivian forces brush aside the Paraguayan border guards and begin a push down the number 9 road. They encounter limited resistance until they hit the Paraguayan military base at Mariscal Estagarribia. They begin a siege of the base and begin securing more of the Chaco region. Paraguayan forces in the east begin their own counterattack, but it ends in failure as the Bolivian Air Force destroys the attack supply lines. Bolivian forces then restart their offensive, which pushes the Paraguayan army back to the Paraguay River. Paraguayan forces blow the bridges of the Paraguay River, stopping the Bolivians from easily crossing into the more populated Parana region. The war falls into a stalemate as Bolivian forces wrap up the siege of Mariscal Estagarribia and mop up any resistance in the Chaco region. With their supply lines secured, Bolivia bombs the Paraguayan airfields in the north, destroying any possibility for response from the smaller Paraguayan Air Force. With air superiority over the region, Bolivian forces take the offensive by constructing temporary bridges over the Paraguay River at Puerto Casado and at Villa del Rosario. They quickly establish bridgeheads and begin moving deeper into Paraguay. The force of the northern bridgehead pushes south. After fighting a decisive battle north of the city, they take Concepcion. Meanwhile, the southern bridgehead blitzes east to take San Estanislao and then south to Coronel Aviado to threaten the capital of Asuncion from the east. The Bolivian forces mop up resistance in the north and then begin a two-pronged campaign in the center. The first prong pushes west to begin a siege of Asuncion, while the second prong attacks east. The second prong takes Ciudad del Este before pushing south to destroy the Paraguayan Second Army at Encarnacion. The first prong pushes into Asuncion and forces a surrender of the capital within a few weeks, forcing Paraguay to capitulate. The peace treaty is signed in Mexico City, where Bolivia takes all of Paraguay. Whoa. Why aren't you subscribed? Come on, it's super easy. All you have to do is hit that button that says subscribe just under the video there. Here, watch this little animation. It shows you how to do it. There you go. See, I told you it was easy. Now, back to the video. Now with its military more experienced and confident, Bolivia begins preparing itself to reclaim its positions on the Pacific Ocean. The Bolivian president demands that Chile restore Bolivia's territory in the Atacama Desert. Chile refuses, and Bolivia wastes little time before declaring war on Chile. The Bolivian army quickly pushes into the Atacama Desert, but finds most of the border towns deserted. As they push deeper, Chile springs their trap and ambushes the invading Bolivians at choke points along the Chilean coastal range, forcing the Bolivians to fall back. Chile then counterattacks, driving the Bolivian units back deep into the Altiplano. The Bolivians put up stiff resistance in front of Oruro and La Paz, holding the Chilean units in place. Bolivian reinforcements then join the fight from the south and surround the units attacking Oruro before eliminating them. Afraid of being cut off, The Chilean forces at La Paz retreat back into northern Chile, but Bolivian forces quickly push across the Altiplano and take the Chilean port city of Iquique. With the remaining Chilean army cut off in the north, Bolivian units push in and force their surrender within a few weeks. With the north now secure, Bolivia restarts its offensive to the south to take Calama. Bolivian forces push on to Antofagasta, but find the key port heavily defended. Instead of taking the city, the Bolivian army bypasses it and sets up a siege. Bolivian units continue south to take Copiapo, where they engage with a new Chilean counterattack south of the town. Through the largest battle of the war, they hold out and force a retreat of the Chileans. Antofagasta falls soon after, and Chile sues for peace. The peace conference is held in Rio de Janeiro, where Bolivia takes the lost region of Antofagasta, as well as the regions of Tarapacá and Arica. Bolivia designates the region a special interest zone, with increased investment and special cultural status to keep the population happy. The Bolivian Navy also relocates its main base to Iquique, while also beginning an acquisition program that procures submarines, frigates, corvettes, and patrol boats for the newly invigorated Navy. Immediately following the end of the Atacama War, Peru demands that Bolivia hand over the provinces of Arica and Tarapacá as they were once a part of Peru. Bolivia denies the demands on the basis that Peru had sold these provinces to Chile with the Treaty of Lima. Peru sends its complaint to the International Court of Justice, where a lengthy case is opened, but ultimately the court decides in favor of Bolivia. Instead of accepting the court's decision, Peru declares war on Bolivia. Peru kicks off the war by taking the city of Arica on the coast and follows it up with a main drive on La Paz. Caught completely off guard, the Bolivian military begins an evacuation of the city. The government offices in La Paz have just enough time to evacuate to the official capital of Sucre before La Paz falls. Peru continues its attack, but the local Bolivian forces had already begun to construct a defensive line from the coastline through the Atacama Desert to the Andes Mountains. The Peruvian army continues its push by taking the town of Oruro, but the Bolivian reinforcements from the east begin to arrive and help hold the line to the south and in the Andes Mountains. A minor force of Bolivian troops stationed in the Amazon region invade the Peruvian Amazon to the north, but limited logistics make a push into the Peruvian Andes too difficult to push very far. The war in the south turns into a stalemate, as neither side is able to dislodge the other, but Bolivia finds a unique way to change the direction of the war. Over the years, Bolivia had become a well-regarded ally of the indigenous peoples of South America, in which Bolivia had cultivated relationships within these indigenous communities. Utilizing these relationships, Bolivia secretly contacts the indigenous peoples of Peru and begins funneling weapons into the heavily indigenous southern provinces of the nation. They light the fire, and an indigenous revolution begins across all of Peru. Stunned, the Peruvian military is forced to begin a withdrawal from Bolivia to deal with the indigenous uprising back at home. Bolivia takes full advantage of this and begins a counterattack that pushes the Peruvians completely out of Bolivia and begins marching into southern Peru. Tacna, Puno, and Arequipa fall quickly as Peruvian forces abandon the south. Cusco falls and is soon followed by Ayacucho and Huancayo as the indigenous peoples begin to welcome the Bolivians as liberators. The Bolivians begin to push on Lima, forcing Peru to sue for peace. The peace conference is held in Sucre, where Peru cedes much of its southern and eastern provinces to Bolivia. Following the war with Peru, Argentina begins to fear that Bolivia will begin to target its northern provinces for expansion. Learning from the Peru-Bolivia conflict, the Argentine High Command realizes that the only way to stop Bolivia from attacking Argentina is for Argentina to attack Bolivia first when they least expect it. Argentina begins to quietly build up its military forces in its northern provinces in preparation for an attack. But Bolivia had learned from its conflict with Peru as well. Determined to never be taken by surprise again, Bolivia had begun heavily investing into its intelligence apparatus. This Bolivian intelligence agency discovers the Argentine buildup and determines that Argentina is preparing to attack Bolivia within weeks. Alarmed, Bolivia decides to commit to a preemptive attack to weaken Argentina. Bolivia declares war and commences the attack as the Bolivian Air Force hits airfields and troop buildups across northern Argentina. The preemptive strike catches the Argentine military completely by surprise, resulting in the destruction of much of the Argentine Air Force on the ground and severe disruptions to military communications. As the preemptive airstrikes commenced, Bolivia simultaneously launched several offensives into Argentina. The first was in the Far East, which takes the city of Posadas on the eastern bank of the Parana River. The second was the largest of the offensives, which secures a border crossing across the Pilcomayo River in the province of Formosa. The third was the smallest and involved the highly trained Bolivian mountaineer units invading the Argentine Andes. The western offensive pushes deep into the Andes to secure the city of Salta, while anchoring a defensive line along the eastern slope of the Andes. The central offensive pushes south to take Formosa, before pushing further to Resistencia. From there, units from the west and center converge in the southern Chaco, cutting off the Argentine units still trying to reorganize. Meanwhile, the eastern offensive takes the Misiones province and pushes to take Corrientes, which protects the eastern flank. With unchallenged air supremacy, the Bolivian Air Force initiates a massive bombing campaign of the Argentine units in the north before forces in the region initiate an offensive destroying those units. Backed by superior air units, Bolivia begins pushing south on all fronts. They take San Miguel de Tucumán and Santiago del Estero in the west, while the east sees the fall of Reconquista in Goya. From there, the assault continues until the Argentine military puts up a successful defense of the cities of Cordoba, Santa Fe, and Parana. Forces in the east decide to bypass Parana and begin threatening to cross the Parana River at Rosario before the bridge there is destroyed. With little other option, the Bolivian armies in front of Cordoba and Santa Fe simultaneously attack on their fronts, while a paratrooper brigade takes the town of Zarate and the bridge crossings there. With the Bolivians now just 50 miles from the capital of Buenos Aires, Argentina sues for peace. The peace conference is held in Sao Paulo, where Bolivia takes all of Argentina's territory east of the Parana River and north of the Salado River, with the western section utilizing various natural features for the border. And that about does it for Bolivia's empire. Bolivia has gone from a small nation in Central South America to a regional power that commands a vast and diverse territory from the Pacific Ocean to the Rio de la Plata. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and if you would, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and tell me what you think of this Bolivian empire by leaving a comment below. Anyways, I'll see you next time as we turn Bosnia and Herzegovina into an empire in Empires A to Z.